What should you look for in the galley of a cruising boat? It may not be what you think. Hi, I'm Carolyn Sherlock, and on this episode of the Boat Galley podcast, I share what I think are the 3 most important galley features. This episode of the Boat Galley podcast is sponsored by FastSeas.com, budget-friendly weather routing and passage planning for cruisers. Buy a cruiser. Plan your next passage using FastSeas.com. Whether you're after speed or comfort, FastSeas will find the optimum route to your destination. And use coupon code BG20 for an exclusive 10% discount. FastSeas, making weather routing simple. Are you just starting to look at cruising boats? One of many questions you're probably asking is what galley features are important. In some ways, it's an impossible question to answer. Features that might be necessary on a 45-foot boat that's going to be used for extensive cruising would be totally impractical on a 25-footer used for overnights and weekend trips. Still, there are some universal galley features that separate the good from the bad. Primary consideration should be on 3 aspects of basic layout and configuration. These 3 are all things that would be either expensive or impractical to change and will make a huge impact on your satisfaction or frustration with the boat. And they are 3 that, if you haven't had a boat before, you might not think about. I know that I didn't until I encountered boats that had serious flaws in each of these. Regardless of the size of the boat and your cruising ground, these 3 features are things that I look at first. Sure, there are other important considerations, but if a boat doesn't do well on these 3, I'm not going to look any further at it unless I were planning to gut the interior. Okay, let's talk about the first thing. Can the cook be thrown across the boat? While there are many features of a galley that contribute to the safety of the cook, most are relatively easy and inexpensive to remedy. However, if the basic layout allows the cook to be thrown 6 feet across the galley in rough weather, it's a real problem. I learned this the hard way. The first offshore passage I did was on a Saga 43 with a fairly wide open galley. We ended up in a gale off New Jersey, and I was tossed, reaching for a box of crackers. When the boat rolled, there was simply nothing to brace myself against. While you do need an opening to get in and out of the galley, keeping it small and with something at least hip-high, no more than about 4 feet away, 3 is even better. That will limit the chances for serious injury. Depending on the size of the boat, this doesn't have to result in a tiny galley. You just don't want one with a lot of empty floor space from side to side. The second item that I look at is plenty of ventilation. The good thing about buying an older boat is that they usually do have good ventilation. Newer boats are often built with air conditioning, and thus little thought is given to passive ventilation. Large opening hatches and portholes are essential to being comfortable at anchor. The galley creates heat, steam, and food smells. While the heat can be welcome in cool climates, the steam will quickly raise the humidity and the potential for mold and mildew. And most of us don't want to wake up to the smell of last night's fish dinner. Now, while you can add fans and wind scoops to make the most of the ventilation you have, adding or enlarging hatches and ports is much more expensive and tricky to do. And then there's the third thing. Are the hot and cold areas logical? One of our biggest frustrations with our first cruising boat, K-Tal, was the placement of the refrigerator. It was right next to the engine compartment and also right at the foot of the companionway where the sun beat down on it. I have no idea what it cost us in extra amps used for the refrigerator, but I'm sure it was considerable. For some reason, Older cruising boats tended to have the icebox, which was later converted to a refrigerator, right next to the engine, with not a lot of insulation in between. In later years, Diana did reverse the layout of the galley so that the sink was next to the engine compartment, and the refrigerator or icebox was on the other arm of the U, surrounded by air and out of direct sunlight. Even if you don't have refrigeration and just use a portable cooler, this can be an issue. Is there a cool and secure place to put the cooler? If you haven't done much cruising, it's easy to underestimate the importance of not wasting electricity for a refrigerator or the ice in a cooler. For us, using just 10% less power for the refrigerator would have meant that we could run the water maker twice as long each day. For others, it could mean less time running a generator. For those using ice, it could mean an extra day or two before having to find a place to buy more. Okay, items 1 and 2 to me are non-negotiable. The third one might not be 100% non-negotiable, that's the hot and cold places, but it's a very serious consideration. We didn't realize the serious flaw in the design of Ketal's galley until after we were cruising. Any boat is going to have trade-offs, and the biggest plus for Ketal was that the previous owners had already spent a bundle of time and money upgrading her so she was ready to cruise. Even knowing about the consequences of the refrigerator being next to the engine, we might still have chosen her. But I'm sure we would have looked harder at some other boats and not bought her quite so quickly. Researching galleys before we bought Ketal, 2 items kept popping up: the need for a U-shaped galley and a double sink. Frankly, I disagree with both. The rationale for a U-shaped galley is that it provides a way for the cook to wedge him or herself in. Now, I've seen plenty of U-shaped galleys with the open side towards the center of the boat and no way for the cook to brace against the roll of the boat. The more important concern is that the cook can't be thrown too far. Galley work will never be 100% safe, but larger distances simply cause larger injuries. And now I have absolutely no idea why anyone would think that a double sink is necessary. Supposedly, it's so that you don't fill up a large sink with water for dishes. But all I ever do is put some water in the bottom of one of my dirty pans and then wash the other things from there. So I don't care about having a large sink or a small one. I hated the double sink that came with Ketal, and I replaced it almost immediately. It was so small that actually you could not put a plate in diagonally on edge. But the thing is, items like this are pretty inexpensive to change if you decide you want something different than what the boat came with. Now, even once you get past those 3 things in the galley, there's plenty more to think about for the boat. But others tend to be more obvious, such as the amount of storage, the type of stove, whether there's a refrigerator, and so on. Thanks for listening to the Boat Galley podcast today. I hope you'll sign up, subscribe, leave a review, tell your friends, do anything and everything. Thanks.